Hello and welcome to Mamarama, the show about being a parent. I am here today with Amy Levine, who is a certified sexuality educator with a master's degree in
human sexuality.
Human sexuality. And a lot of Amy's work is involved with speaking to parents about how to speak to their children about sexuality. And that is actually how I came to know Amy, because I attended a workshop that was called Raising Sex-Positive Kids.
You
Is that what
got
it was called?
Yeah.
Raising Sex-Positive Kids, which is kind of a provocative title, you know, and I really wanted to see what that was all about. And I was really curious about this because recently there had been a lot of talk via a show that Oprah had done where this sexuality expert came on and basically said that we should be talking to our children about sexuality from very, very early on. It was not considered to be a topic that should be broached at puberty or when people traditionally think it's appropriate to bring up this subject matter, which, let's face it, is difficult for a lot of parents to, it's probably the most difficult one for parents to deal with. Anything, but the moment you get into like sexuality issues, parents get very tense and frequently don't know what to do, but will often say that they don't want to do what their parents did. Tell me, like, how, like, what's
Absolutely.
your feeling about that?
I think so many people have poor role models. Maybe their parents never talked with them about sexuality growing up, which is often the case, whether it's sort of a religious experience, cultural experiences, they all play a part in how sexuality is addressed in the way, you know, as we're growing up and the messages that we receive. So oftentimes by the time we're older, you know, we do want to do something different, or hopefully we are able to recognize that we want to do something different than what our parents or caregivers, you know, did for us. And really it is something that it should just be a casual conversation. It doesn't have to be this one big thing that needs to happen.
Right. I think that a lot of parents have this feeling, and myself included, and I don't even know why I thought about it this way, that there needs to be the talk. You know, you hear parents like refer to that all the time. You know, when are you going to do the talk? Or have you done that yet? Or we just had that, or I wasn't sure what to say during the talk. And one of the things I learned from your workshop is that it's helpful not to think about it as one specific conversation, or worse, monologue, right? Where the parent is just spilling information, perhaps more than the child needs to know, perhaps less than they need to know. Anyway, but the point that I think that you made was that leaving the door open for communication is really the most important thing, and that issues concerning sexuality are an ongoing dialogue, are not just a monologue. They are an ongoing dialogue, and that there are opportunities all the time that that come up in daily life with kids that give you the opportunity to discuss certain things. Give me some examples of teaching moments.
Yeah, so I often call them teachable moments, teaching moments, whatever you want to call them, but they're things that just sort of naturally occur. Maybe you're at the grocery store and you see a woman who's pregnant, and you can sort of make a comment to your child then, oh, look, she's pregnant, and just sort of, she's going to have a baby, and then you can start, you know, relaying the facts, or just say, well, what do you think about that? And that just sort of leaves the door open for conversation to happen. You know, we live in a society that's bombarded by messages from the media about sexuality. So maybe you're watching TV with your preteen or teen, and some sort of sexual situation comes up, because we know more often than not that's sort of the storyline of the show more than anything else these days. Right. And you can just turn to your child and say, wow, you know, this is what I think. Well, what do you think? I mean, I think often young people, I mean, wow, you know, we all went through this ourselves. We don't want to hear a lecture. They don't want to hear a lecture. Right.
They want to be able to actually have a dialogue about it, like we were saying. That really is important, right? It's, you know.
And so having that open conversation and really allowing them to share what they think really just opens the door for a whole nother type of conversation. I mean, even when kids are really young, what we were talking about before, about, you know, how Oprah's been doing a lot of these shows lately, talking about sexuality with your child really begins at birth, and it's something as simple as changing diapers and giving them certain toys to play with. Those all send messages. So I don't know if you want me to get into sort of those messages and what they entail.
Well,
now,
it's interesting.
Go into it later.
I have to say I have to talk about my experience personally a little bit here, because it's really interesting for me in that I'm involved in the childbirth education field, and my children know a lot about birth, okay? They know more about birth than most adults do. And they ask a lot of really good and provocative questions that I love. Yet, they have a separation in their mind between birth and sex. They know that sperm plus egg equals a baby, but they don't know the mechanics about what leads up to that, the emotional part of it. Like, all that other stuff is put on the side. So here I have my children knowing a lot about the mechanics of childbirth, which again is more than a lot of kids know, and is sometimes seen as questionable by some of my peers. Between menstruation and childbirth, which my children are extremely well versed on, I never got into a real conversation about sexuality. And I think that my resistance, and this is going to be the question I pose to you, my resistance, and probably the same resistance that many other parents share, is that we want to protect. We have this feeling that not talking about it protects the innocence of our children. Why does an 8 or 9-year-old need to know certain things that we as adults view as adult subject matter? So let me try and like make that question more succinct, because this is really the big issue, and this is something that I want to hear about, and I know that many of my friends kind of grapple with. Are we doing like a somewhat of a disservice by not explaining these things to our children, who, by the way, are going to find out about this stuff more likely in an inappropriate manner than it's going to be in the way that we intend? And I can already see my older daughter coming home from school with information from other kids who knows where they might have learned it from watching rated R movies, or in a completely inappropriate way. So
so it's the misinformation that we need to be concerned about. And if I can just back up for a minute, just to frame sort of what sexuality is. Is that cool? Could we do that now?
I want to talk about that.